Good morning, one and all present here for the webinar. Today is our second webinar on engaging learners online remote teaching with Dr. Deepti Gupta ma'am. I heartily welcome her. She is Chairperson, Department of English and Cultural Studies from Panjab University, Chandigarh. Today, she is going to cover in her session. The session will explore the tools that students will require in order to progress in the world, where skills and abilities are required for success in one's professional life. The talk will present these strategic components while discussing ways of developing this in studies. So I am very much thankful to her. In this context, I'm privileged to welcome Deepti ma'am. Ma'am, please start your explanation to your lecture. In the last 10 minutes, we will have a question answer session. Any viewers, if you want to ask anything to Deepti ma'am, we can have one session for question answer also. So ma'am, over to you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mansi.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. In this session, we are going to talk about how we can help our students develop professionally. And I'd just like to add a note of caution here. You know, whenever we talk about the development of students, the first question that comes up is, where is the time? Because it's not a part of the curriculum. The second question that comes up is that students are not motivated enough. If you talk to them about the syllabus, they are very happy. But the moment you tell them that we are going to talk about something that is not a part of the syllabus, immediately there is a kind of resistance. So first of all, my advice to you would be that don't make this something that is imposed upon them. We all know as teachers, there are many times, you know, for example, if there is a day when the attendance is very thin and you don't want to take your syllabus further, you can talk about some of these things. And also remember, as teachers, we are role models. So whatever I am telling you today in terms of professional development, you can actually show them through your personality and behavior so that they understand that in order to succeed in professional life, what is it that you need? So you needn't worry about taking out time, etc. Even if it is 5 minutes a day, that's more than enough. Also, in terms of the curriculum, I understand that there are demands on us of all kinds, but there's no reason why you can't integrate something small into your lesson. So today I'm just going to give you certain areas, a list of areas that need development where our learners are concerned, so that our learners become well-developed professionals, whatever field they choose. I'm going to start sharing my presentation now, and once I start sharing the presentation, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, or at the end of the session, we'll give you around 10 minutes when we'll have the question hour. All right? So now coming to the presentation. So we are talking about professional development, my friends. But the first question you need to ask yourself is there a difference between the professional and the personal? Do you think that as a person you are something different? As a professional you are something different? This is what we need to convey to our learners, that you may progress in terms of promotions, you may get time-bound pay scales, but do you think you deserve them? Do you feel that your growth is optimal? You've reached the point of time where you don't need further growth? Also, remember that our professional development is the tip of the iceberg in terms of every individual. Whatever we are in our professional lives, that is just the tip. The rest of the iceberg is below the surface of the water. See it. And that rest of the iceberg, friends, is going to determine how the tip looks, what is the nature of the tip, how the tip behaves. So your behavior in your professional life is going to be determined by how you are in your personal life, how proactive you are, how motivated you are towards new experiences, towards new learning, which is why I'm going to give you a very cruel question now. Do you think classroom education is everything? Because fortunately or unfortunately, at some point of time, learners begin to feel that classroom education is everything. And this is the question that you need to ask yourself and you need to ask your learners. That is the classroom education the be all and end all of your professional development? Because the classroom education is a starting point, remember friends. It is not the end. What matters is how much are you investing in your classroom education? How much are you adding to your classroom education? You can use some kind of a simile to tell them. For example, you tell them that when you have your birthday, do you like a plain cake or do you like a cake with all the toppings? Do you like lots of cream on top, lots of pineapple, lots of strawberries, decoration, a beautiful birthday candle? So you can tell them that the classroom education is like the plain cake and all the toppings that you see are what you add after the classroom education. So the choice is yours. Also, the message to be conveyed is that once you get employment, you are not just a free bird. You are a person who has a responsibility to an organization, and that responsibility is to be fulfilled through your professional growth. So your professional growth never stops. Your learning never stops. It continues all through your life, all through your career. Your personal life and your professional life, in a way, are separate compartments in terms of what happens in both of them. But in terms of the learning, they are not compartments. In terms of the learning that you put in, they are related and they feed into each other. So this is the message that you need to give them. In every class, I feel we must do a SWOT analysis for our learners. SWOT, you all know: strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. These four work hand in hand. So your strength and weakness are a part of your professional makeup. Opportunities are what give you the chance to grow. The threats are what hold you back. So ask them to do a SWOT analysis, both in terms of the technical specialist education part and in terms of the self-development. Who you are, what you are, where are you going. So the biggest tool that you can give to your learners is the tool of self-reflection. Know thyself, as Socrates said and Swami Vivekananda said, and all these sages have been repeated. Know thyself is the biggest answer to professional development. You've got to introspect, look within, assess yourself, be critical, and then write down your SWOT analysis, both in terms of your specialist education and in terms of your general self-development. Also, it's a good idea. In fact, I feel even for teachers, all of us, it's a good idea to keep your short-term goals in mind. Where will I be after 2 years? What kind of a person do I want to be? Now, when we talk about short-term goals, it's not just in terms of the money we earn. It's not just in terms of the facilities we get. It's also in terms of what we have read, what we have understood and absorbed. What kind of character traits are we looking for? So the short-term goals around 2 years. For some people it could be 1 year, 3 years. Of course, it's all flexible. Now please remember, whatever I'm giving you in this session is not something that's meant to be a sealed compartment. These are all free, flexible areas that have to be built up according to the time and opportunity that your student has. So the second aspect is the medium term goal. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now, or 4 years, or 6 years? And see yourself not just in terms of the professional position, but in terms of the kind of human being you are. And when we talk about the long-term goals, say 10 years down the line or 12 years down the line, then we also think or start thinking of what is it that we have given back to society? Are we doing something for the community we are in? Am I contributing something to the group I belong to? Am I contributing something to where I live? Am I contributing something to the group of people I interact with, the cohort I belong to? If I belong to a cohort of teachers, have I done the kind of research that can be path setting? If I belong to a group of civil servants, have I taken care of the objectives of my seat? So remember, where the short-term goals are concerned, there your learners are looking more at employment. They are looking at placement. They are looking at financial independence. Where medium-term goals are concerned, they are looking at getting settled. They are also looking at their life partners. They are thinking about their parents and their siblings and perhaps their children. Where the long-term goals are concerned, there they are taking care of the future. What is it? Where do I see myself? How do I contribute to the community? What kind of a person will I be? And if we begin with know thyself, then the last question would be, do I like myself? That, friends, is a very important question, because we are often very quick to say, I don't like so and so, or we are very quick to tell somebody, I don't like this in you. But do we ever examine ourselves? That is why critical thinking is very, very important. And critical thinking is something that you can nurture in a classroom without too much of trouble. If you've given them a chapter to read, encourage them to think about it critically. If something has happened in the world, encourage them to wear their critical glasses and then look at it. Because friends, our goal is not just to produce successful professionals. Our goal is also to produce global citizens, citizens of the world, maybe tomorrow the universe, those who can take care of the universe, those who understand what self-reliance and self-sustenance means. Now, I often talk about the quotient scale where teachers and students are concerned, because over the years we've added so many quotients, you know. There's the knowledge quotient that takes care of what you learn on your curriculum, that takes care of what you learn when you look at the world around you, when you understand the news that happens around you, the incidents that happen around you. Do you know what is the basic population of your city, for example? Do you know the kind of people who live in your city? Do you understand the kind of country you come from, the kind of society you come from? And this leads up to what we call the IQ, or the intelligence quotient, which means, are you capable of solving small basic problems? Do you have the cognitive strength to handle cognitive challenges and work them out. And these days, we also talk about the social quotient. Social quotient meaning where we are talking about how we interact with others, how we deal with others, and as a member of a community or a society, what is our behavior when we are with others. This leads to another very important quotient, which is the spiritual quotient. How well do you understand your life as a human being? Do you know what journey path are you on? Do you understand what life is? Do you understand relationships? Now, this may seem like a very tall order when we look at a classroom, that where is the time to look at all these quotients? But by and by you will realize, for instance, the knowledge quotient. If in the morning you just go and shoot a question from the newspaper, or you have one child who is on duty, turn by turn, give a duty to every child in the class to write one heading from the newspaper on the whiteboard or the blackboard or the smart board. Or if you have a WhatsApp group, one student puts up a small piece of news on the WhatsApp group. So this is just a way of sensitizing them to be more alert individuals. Intelligence quotient means that you're not going to spoon feed in your class. Sometimes you do have to do some hand holding and you do have to guide students, but that doesn't mean that you are all the time spoon feeding them or you are all the time leading them by the hand. Social quotient means where you also have a level of comfort with your class. For instance, now you have a small class of 30, for example, and obviously some student's birthday is going to come while the classes are on. So why not have a small roster where you wish everyone? You remember in school, we would wish every child whenever a birthday happened. So why can't we do it as the senior level? We all know as adults, we love it when people sing happy birthday for us. This is just one example. We can also make use of our festivals in order to enhance the social quotient. When you have a get together in the college, for example, encourage every person to interact, encourage every person to participate. And of course, the spiritual quotient can be developed through your input in the classroom. If there has been some unhappy episode, you can always talk about it. And when you talk about it, you are giving a sense of balance to your class. So also remember that what I said about your learner as the professional life being the tip of the iceberg also applies to you as a teacher. So unless and until you understand that human beings are spiritual beings, there's no way you can talk about the spiritual quotient. And it's a fact that human beings are spiritual beings. Now, one very important quotient is the emotional quotient or the EQ, or what we call emotional intelligence. We make a lot of noise about emotional intelligence, but first of all, we need to understand what is emotional intelligence. You see, most importantly, emotional intelligence is being able to manage your emotions and the emotions of others. For instance, if there has been an unhappy episode on the road, say there has been an accident and you see people fighting with each other about the accident, you can calmly step in and tell them that you can work out whose fault it was later, but why don't we attend to the people who are injured first? Now that I feel would be an instance of a very good level of emotional intelligence. So this is what we need to convey in our classroom too. There can be very small episodes. For example, Many times it happens that while you are teaching, somebody loses temper, or there is shouting from outside, or maybe worse comes to worse, somebody walks into your classroom and is angry with you or is rude with you. Now that is the moment to emphasize emotional quotient. If you don't react and you stay calm and you simply say, I'll come and talk to you once the class is over, everything is settled, because then your students can see, ma'am didn't lose her temper. Ma'am stayed calm. That message is very, very important. You know, I have a colleague who once was teaching in his class, and there were 3 or 4 teachers standing outside the class who were talking very loudly. So he just went outside and he said, excuse me, my class is on. Could you please speak softly? He just made the request and he closed the door and came inside. One of those teachers walked in a fit of temper, opened the door and said, if you feel so disturbed, keep your door closed. And this person banged the door very loudly and walked off. Now the whole class was waiting for my friend's reaction. How could he respond? He didn't say anything. He simply gave a smile and continued teaching. Many years hence, I met 1 or 2 of his students from that class, and they said, ma'am, that episode had such an impact on our minds that even today, when we feel like losing temper, we think how sir reacted, how he could have also lost his temper and wasted our precious time. So you see, this is how you become a role model. By choosing that one moment to show your students, no, this is not how intelligent people react. This is how you can help them to cultivate people skills. Because whatever your job, friends, now in teaching we say is a people profession, but these days every profession has become a people profession. In every profession you need to deal with other human beings. So what are the key words here? The key words are listen, not hear, because hearing is the physical aspect of listening. Hearing is when the sound waves enter your ear, there is a vibration in the eardrum. Now that is hearing. The listening starts when that vibration reaches your brain and your cognitive processes decode that vibration. So listen to people, don't just hear. Appreciate people. If somebody is, tell your learners when you go to class and you see a boy who's very smartly dressed, there's no harm in asking him, oh, you are looking wonderful today, where are you going? Or if you see a girl very beautifully dressed, tell her, you're looking so pretty today. So teach them to appreciate people. Teach them to believe in people, but in a critical manner. Don't let people fool you, but by and large, trust people, believe in them, help people, reach out to them, understand the crisis that people could be going through, empathize, look out for any flags that tell you here is a person who is in trouble and needs some kind of assistance. Also, when there is any discussion in the classroom, teach them to negotiate. How do you negotiate so that it helps both the parties? So these, friends, are the people skills that they will require in order to succeed and in order to flourish in this competitive world. Now I come to the most important aspect of communication. You see, Nobody knows how competent you are till you communicate. That communication is very, very important in order to display how competitive you are or how skillful you are. So whether it is your personal communication, whether it is your business communication, what is personal communication? The day-to-day communication we have with our friends, with our family members, even with our colleagues sometimes we have personal relationships. And then business communication where you are writing emails to each other, where you are writing notices for the office, or where you are writing reports, you are writing agendas for a meeting, minutes for a meeting, proceedings of a meeting, or any kind of document that is meant for work. So teach them one thing, that whether communication is personal or business, you need to establish a certain standard, a set of parameters. I'm sure as expert teachers, you've heard of the 7 C's of communication. Now those 7 C's of communication are completeness, conciseness, correctness, concreteness, courtesy, consideration. Now these C's of communication, you can check them out on the internet any day. But the point is conveying those C's to them in the classroom. That is going to happen through your communication with them. When you have a personal communication with a student, keep it separate from the classroom. When there is business communication, for example, you need to put up a notice or you need to put up any kind of memo or any kind of information for the class, make sure that it is of a certain standard and enforce these standards right through your school or college. Communication can be verbal. Verbal means to do with words, where you are using words. It can be non-verbal too. Non-verbal means where you are not using words. For example, sign language, gestures, facial expression, body language, even the way you sit down, the way you stand up, the way you wear clothes. For example, in your classroom, you must tell your learners, why is an interview important? Why do we go dressed up in a certain manner for an interview? And why does the way we walk into a room matter? For example, one day you can go to class and say, oh class, today we are going to do a very interesting lesson. Now obviously that's a conflicting message because your yawn is telling them that it's not interesting, but your words say that it's interesting. So through such cues, you can show them that if you go for an interview wearing your bathroom slippers, you are giving the message that you are not serious about the interview. Or if you send your job resume on a dirty piece of paper, you are again giving the message that you are not serious about this job. So there are many things that you can cover under communication by demonstrating to them. For example, if they are applying for job interviews, tell them that you need to create a resume separately for every job you apply for. You need to write a cover letter exclusively for that job if you want to give the serious impression. And remember, friends, how do we communicate? Through language. So our language is a code for communication. Whatever the language we use, and also one very positive aspect of Indian society is that we are all simultaneously multilingual, which means that we are good, all of us, equally at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 languages. So this is something to cherish. At the same time, a note of caution. Because your professional life is going to demand a different language, so make sure that you are good at that language. Make sure that you are proficient in that language. Now, this is not difficult, friends. In your classroom, through your use of the language, you can show them how language matters, how language is important. And in these days of the digital media, practice in the language is not difficult. So once your student has decided, okay, Gujarati is going to be my professional language, then your student has to become proficient in Gujarati and every aspect of Gujarati. If your student has decided English is going to be my professional language, your student will have to be proficient in English. And remember, this proficiency will be of the level that if your student goes anywhere in the world, he or she will be able to use the language professionally with success. You see, because proficiency in a language is quite like learning to drive a car or a motorbike. If you want to learn to drive a car, you don't drive a scooter in order to learn the car. If you need to learn to drive a Maruti, you'll of course practice to drive a Maruti. So similarly with language, if you've decided what is going to be your professional language, then you have to put in the effort to become an expert at that. These days, becoming an expert is not difficult. You just have to take the support of the internet and put in as much practice as you can. Remember, listening, speaking, reading, writing are the skills of language. Why do we say listening, speaking, reading, writing? Because when a child is born, the first skill of language that he or she learns is listening. If you recall your children, or if you recall children you have seen around you, after they are born, for a year or a year and a half, they remain silent and they observe the world around them. They observe how people are using the language and they are quietly storing away everything in their minds. Many times we feel, oh, the child is silent, the child is not speaking. Remember, the child is very, very smart, smarter than you. The child is putting away in the mind what is the difference between E and E, U and U, A and A. So the child is filing away the information. Why? So that the child, the day the child has all the information complete, all the files are complete in the brain, the child will start speaking and will use language correctly and effectively. Now listening and speaking are going to lead to reading, because once the symbols of language, remember friends, I said language is a code. Once the symbols of language are there in the mind, are there in the listening, then they are recognized on the paper. And then with listening and speaking and reading, we move on to writing. So writing is the cumulative point of listening, speaking, reading. And remember friends, listening and reading are the receptive skills where you are receiving from the world around you. Speaking and writing are the productive skills where you are producing. Now, if you think of a factory needs raw material if it is going to produce the finished products. So through listening and reading, you are giving the raw material to your cognition to produce speaking and writing. Now, this basic fact is a fact that our education system has taken very long indeed to understand. I'm glad that the NEP 2020 is focusing on the multilingual nature of Indian society. It's laying stress on the multilingual nature of Indians, and it's encouraging multilingualism in the classroom. At the same time, we also need to teach our learners how to write well, and that will not happen unless and until the listening, speaking and reading are happening in the right sequence, at the right time and with the right kind of instruction. So remember, if you are language teachers, keep this in mind. And even if you are not language teachers, through your own example, you can show learners how important writing is. Because remember friends, if you are not proficient in communication, if you can't express yourself, then all your professional excellence goes waste. All your skill and talent goes absolutely waste. Now I come to the next aspect that we need to take care of, which is management. Whether it is time management, whether it is stress management, or it is management of the work-life balance. In every field, a human being needs to adjust and accommodate. A human being needs to be critical and intelligent in order to work out these details. Now, the classroom is the best place to teach time management. I'm sure as mature teachers, all of you are creating some kind of lesson plan before you go to class. So it's not a bad idea to share that lesson plan with your class so that they understand that even though you are an expert and senior teacher, still you manage your time. You make plans for your time. Many times I get asked this question because now I've been teaching for more than 30 years. So often I get, 35. Often I get asked this question when I am preparing my lesson, somebody calls up and I say I'm preparing my lesson. So the person says, you've been teaching for so many years, why do you have to still prepare your lesson? So my answer always is that every class is unique. Every class has its own challenges. And believe me friends, time management is one of the very big challenges in a classroom. We discussed in the beginning that finishing the syllabus on time is a major Damocles sword that is dangling on all our heads. So how you manage your curriculum in the class is going to give the message to your learners that this is how you can manage time carefully. Now, where time management is concerned, it is linked with stress management. Because if you don't manage your time well, automatically you will be under stress. In fact, whatever I've been talking about here, these concepts are actually not watertight compartments. They all spill over. So if you're a bad time manager, you will be under stress. And when you are under stress, your work-life balance will suffer. When your work-life balance suffers, professional relationships are going to be in trouble. And when personal relationships are in trouble, the opportunities to grow will be lost to you, because you will be so lost in managing your personal relationships that you will lose all these opportunities for growth. So, this is one detail that we need to tell our learners, that if there is a small problem on the professional front which is making you a bad time manager, then you have to rectify it ASAP. Don't leave it dangling. And also, right from the beginning of the career, each youngster must have strategies for time management in place, along with some kind of an escape route for getting rid of any stress that has accumulated. Some people make use of music. Some people go for a walk. I know people who go to the gym for a workout, or who play a game, or who just sit down with a quiet cup of tea or coffee. So every person has a different way of dealing with stress. So these 5 areas, if they are managed well, will lead to a well-rounded professional. One very, very important aspect of professional development is traveling for study. Now, for this, there can be many ways in which you can travel. I'll come to those ways later. But the reasons remain the same. Whatever the reasons for travel, the advantages remain the same. For instance, you experience a different culture, you meet new communities, make new friends, you learn in new places, you do your learning in new places, you begin to understand new languages. Sometimes you may not learn the language, but you start understanding it. And most important, a student learns to manage life when he or she is on his or her own, learning how to live in a new society, a new world. Also, the personality goes global. You now know how to communicate with people who belong to different cultures. Also, the person toughens up. So, encourage your learners to grab opportunities for travel. And you can encourage them in a very simple way. I'm sure every institution has some matching institutions abroad where there is possibility of an exchange program. So encourage exchange programs. Encourage learners from different cultures to come to your city or to come to your institute to interact with your learners, to be with your learners, to meet them and to show them a different culture. In fact, even if it is not an exchange program, there can be some kind of learning or exchange through the digital media. For example, sharing classes with a partner university or encouraging your learners to interact with learners from a partner university. There are many kinds of opportunity that you can give your learners. For instance, a summer school. Most universities abroad and now also in India have started offering summer schools. A summer school is a very short program in the summer vacation, sometimes in the winter or even during the Easter vacation, when students can come over, maybe for 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and they live on your campus for that period. The university I belong to, the Panjab University, has a very strong summer school program. Now, every year, some students from our university go to universities all over the world, whether it's Australia, UK, America, Japan. They just go for a few weeks, attend some courses there, and we also have students coming to the Punjab University from other universities around the world. Now we've noticed one thing, that when these summer schools started, our learners became more open-minded. They became more helpful and more generous. So one sees the growth in the children. The summer school is one way of encouraging this. Offer summer schools at your institutes. Take up offers of other summer schools. If somewhere around October or November, you look at the website of various institutes and universities, you will find loads of opportunities for summer schools. That's one. The second is small projects. The students can do small projects maybe with other parts of the country or other parts of the world. There always are small short-term research projects that can be taken up, even if it is not research, even if it is just a small project that maybe a university or a department is offering. Also, there are many opportunities for getting research grants. For instance, there is a fellowship that you can do at the Indian Parliament, where you get a chance to watch the Parliament in action. And all you have to do is write their reports, whatever is happening there. They give you a small section of the Parliament to work on. So this is an excellent opportunity to interface and to interact with people who are from a different sphere. You see, for these kinds of opportunity, you need to encourage your youngsters to think out of the box, to go beyond what they think is education. Also, they can take up research projects. There are, for instance, the European Union keeps advertising research projects. The British Council keeps advertising research projects. So the idea is to keep your eyes and ears open and to keep giving opportunities to your learners. I'm sure there is a notice board or a digital board in every institute or university where you can put up information related to these things. And then of course there are short-term courses. For example, if you have learners who don't have any financial problem, so they can go and attend a short-term course, say for 1 week, 10 days, 15 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That would depend upon the nature of the course. And these courses often develop their personality in a big way. Internships, now many institutions and many business organizations offer internships that you can take up. And this is an excellent opportunity in the summer break, in the winter break, when learners can go, and some of these internships, for example, internships with newspapers, those are very beneficial for children who want a career in journalism, because it gives them the exposure to the profession before entering it. That would you be able to manage in the profession? That's one way. Also, internships and short-term courses build up the resume of the learner. I can't emphasize enough the importance of a good resume where professional life is concerned. So teach your students to keep adding to the resume and be on the lookout for any opportunities that will look good on the resume. I've seen children from class 10th and 11th who often come to me and ask me, ma'am, what will look good on my resume? Because then that is exactly what I'll do. So you see, this is how children are getting smarter day by day. Also, your university or institute can enter into student exchange agreements with other institutes and universities where you say, okay, once a year you send 20 students to us and once a year we send 20 students to you. And many times this is a very generous offer where students just spend the travel. They don't have to spend any money once they reach the campus. Now, one opportunity also is going and doing some courses for degrees in other countries or going in for higher education in other countries. Now, these are things that you have to cultivate in your learners. I'm sure all your institutes and universities have an office that is devoted to international students. Now, it is the job of this office to take care of these engagements. And this office keeps communicating with other institutes and organizations in order to get enough information that can then be posted for the students. There are a few questions, that you have to encourage your learners to think of. Suppose your student says, I'm going for an internship to such and such place. Or ma'am, I'm going as research assistant. Or I'm going as exchange student. So you've got to encourage them to ask these questions because that is how the whole experience enriches their personality. That is how it makes the experience meaningful because these visits and these exchange programs are not just like a paid holiday. They have a purpose. So the first question is, what is the purpose? Why am I going for this program? What is the objective of doing this course? How is this course going to help me in my career? The second question is, what is the location I am going to? Will I get enough opportunities to learn on that location? Will I be safe there? Will I be able to manage on my own? For example, if somebody is going to Japan as an exchange student, all by himself or herself, just one person. So this question will help to decide what all do you need to do before you go. So the question of location is tied up with so many other things. Then eligibility. Are you eligible? After all, you are applying for something. You are spending money on that application. You are spending time and effort. You are involving so many people in that effort. Are you actually eligible? Or are you just shooting in the dark? And then also most important, what kind of financial support are you getting? Because as we all know, traveling abroad and even within India today is not a very cheap proposition. It involves a lot of money, a lot of finances. So once you are selected, that is not the time to ask where the money is going to come from. The question of financial support has to be answered right in the beginning. Am I being funded by some agency? Or do I have to spend from my pocket? How much will I need to spend from my pocket? What is the support I will get? Because there are many bodies that are ready to offer financial support. For example, the government of France actively encourages exchange students and learners to come to France with financial help. The British Council regularly supports scholars. The American government, the Fulbright program, the European Union, the Canadian government. So you see, according to the area in which your learner wants to go, not just geographic area, but also the area of specialization. According to that, the learner will decide what kind of financial support can I get, and then to understand the process of selection. This is where you can help. Is there an interview? Is there a written test? Or is it the application that is important? Because, for example, for the Fulbright program, you have to write a very long application. And that application is the basis of being invited for the interview. So you have to overcome your laziness in writing and write an application that is well organized and that presents everything that you need to present. And most important, the statement of purpose. Most of these scholarships and endowments demand a statement of purpose. And you've got to sit down and write this statement of purpose much in advance so that you can take feedback on it from experts around you. Also, the question that you need to ask yourself is, what about the culture of the country to which I'm going? So this is where the role of the teacher comes in, that what kind of culture is there? Will my learner be able to adjust to it? This is where the counseling of the organization comes in. And tied up with culture is the question of language. What is the language used there? For example, if you're going to a country like, say, a country in the an area in the US, you needn't bother too much about the language because English is understood everywhere. But suppose you're going to Japan or China, then that is where you may need to focus more on the language and perhaps learn the language in advance, or at least make sure that you understand the language. Now coming to the selection process, whether it is the selection process for a job or the selection process for a scholarship or fellowship, these parts of the process are going to be important. First of all, as I told you, in some places, just the application is important. So the application becomes very important. In some places, the CV or resume is important. So you have to take care of that. Publications will matter everywhere. So encourage your students the moment they enter a certain profession, start publishing so that you have publications to your name. The statement of purpose is very important. What I told you about, where foreign universities are concerned, they constantly demand a statement of purpose because that is the substitute of your physical presence. And then whether the interview is personal or virtual, how intense is the interview, how much are they going to take from you in terms of questions or in terms of what they require. So these are the things that we need to focus on if we want to prepare our learners for a professional career. If we feel that, okay, this world is a difficult place, There is lots of competition, but I am going to thrive in that competition. I am going to grow and prosper. I am going to progress. So, how do you do that? You can do that by taking care of all these aspects that I. You can do that by helping your learners take care of all these aspects, by working on all these aspects, and by making sure that you impart to them the importance of all these aspects. Now, I'm just going to wind up my session, and if you have any questions, you can start framing them now. I'm going to wind up by giving you a reading list that you can then encourage your learners to read. It's not essential for them to read all the books on this list. Even if they manage to read one or two, it should be okay. And also remember that this is not the only reading list in the world. There are other books also that they can read. It's just that these other books, Mansi ma'am, I've started winding up now. These are the books, yeah. These are the books that can help them, you know, master all that we were talking about. You are welcome to add to this list. You are welcome to delete from this list. You are welcome to replace this list, because as colleagues, I'm sure all of you also have a list of books that you feel your learners should read. The first, of course, is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That tells you that now or today is the only day that exists for you. There's no yesterday, there's no tomorrow. So harness this now, harness this time. The Virtue of Selfishness by Ayn Rand is an important book in the sense that it came out at a time when the whole world was telling people, don't be selfish. And Ayn Rand is one author who said that you have to be selfish at times. You have to take care of yourself first. If you won't take care of yourself, how will you take care of the world? As simple as that. So, if you are caught in a profession that you hate, but you entered it because you wanted to be selfless and make your parents happy, that's not a good way to live, because ultimately you will be unhappy, and who will be the first affected party? Your parents. So this is the second book I want to recommend. And of course, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari is also one book that I feel everyone should read, because it tells you a lot about what the future holds for us and what is it that we need to learn in order to thrive in the future. And of course, Mind Maps by Tony Buzan. Now, this is also related to writing, in the sense that Buzan says that a mind map is something that you draw for yourself. For example, if I tell you, okay, you are now a reader, do you want to become a professor? So you say, yes, I want to become a professor. So I say, what are the things you want to do in order to become a professor? So in the middle you write professor, and then around that you draw lines like the rays of a sun, and you write publications, conferences, administrative duties, classes taught. So what are you doing? In your mind you are mapping what all it is that you need to become a professor. So this is a very powerful book that also teaches you how to organize your writing. So if your learners read how to make a mind map, then they will not suffer in terms of organization. The fifth influential book is The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch. Now Randy Pausch is part of the team that set up this whole idea of Disney World, and he learned one day that he had a certain terminal disease and he used to lecture at various universities. So he announced that this is going to be my last lecture. He went for that lecture. It was also published as a book because he had very young children, since he was pretty young himself, and he wanted his children to know what kind of person their father was. He also wanted to leave certain lessons for them. So the last lecture is a short, beautiful book that contains those lessons. Another influential book is Humankind, A Hopeful History by Rutger Bregman. This was released recently. Now, here Bregman talks about how we have told ourselves that the future of mankind is hopeless. Whereas he says that there are many signs that tell us that we can look forward to a happy, satisfactory, good future. That is why he names the book A Hopeful History. So it's a good book for youngsters to read because it gives them a perspective that is not pessimistic or nihilistic or negative. The last book is How Would You Move Mount Fuji by William Poundstone. Now this is actually not about moving Mount Fuji, but it is about a few questions, that have very difficult answers and which prepare your learner for a difficult interview. That suppose you go for a tough interview and you are asked tough questions, how will you face those questions? So these are the books I felt I would like to sensitize you to. You needn't recommend all of them, but it will be nice if you can read some of them and recommend some of them. I've left my email on the last slide, and if you need to correspond with me, you are welcome. I'll stop here, and if you have any questions, we can talk about them. I'll just stop sharing in a minute or two once you've jotted down my email. So no worries. Mansi ma'am, you can take over now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for such a great, impressive, enlightening session, ma'am. All the viewers liked it, the session very much, and some of the questions they have raised, ma'am, I would like to mention those questions. Just a minute, ma'am. Yeah, one question is, ma'am, stress can badly affect teaching and learning process. How can the learner and facilitator manage stress in an effective manner so that effect on stress on teaching learning can be least?
Yes. You see, in teaching learning, there are many segments where we can have stress. As I said in the beginning, know thyself is most important. You need to understand your situation. Is the stress coming because you are not able to cope with the syllabus? The first thing to do is to diagnose the stress. Where is it coming from? If it is coming because of the syllabus, then that means you need to plan your time. And once you start planning your time, your stress will automatically reduce. Is the stress coming because of a mixed class of learners? Because on many occasions we have a classroom where there are learners with mixed abilities, Some are very bright, some are very poor, and you don't know how to reconcile them. Number 3, is your stress coming because of your professional commitments? For example, maybe you have taken up too much, you are not able to handle it. The principal of your college says, okay, do this, this, this. So you have to learn to say no. Or is your stress happening because of your personal commitments? Again, you have to learn to say no. If you can't go to party every night and manage the morning class, then you have to start to learn to live without that party. These are the concrete steps, you know. And for every stressful situation, if you sit down and diagnose it, you will find some treatment, because then you are like a doctor. That's one aspect. The second aspect is, which is more dangerous, that stress is going to have an impact on your health and your personality. So that is where you have to look at a means of diffusing that stress. You know, there are people who diffuse stress by cooking. They enjoy cooking so much. There are people who diffuse stress by walking, or there are people who are so dependent on a friend or relative. Just sitting and talking with that person helps. But you know, for both these strategies to succeed, whether it is the remedy for stress or it is what you need to do, the concrete plan, for both of these to succeed, know thyself remains most important. So write down, sit down and write, why am I under stress? Pause. The biggest problem is we don't know when to pause. We keep running, and we feel, okay, I'll solve this problem. But you need to pause for a few moments, self-reflect, and then write down what you have found out. Okay,
Right.
Yeah.
Right, ma'am. So know thyself. Self-reflection is very much needed over here, right, ma'am? Thank you, ma'am. Another question is, madam, the real life classroom problem is the learners know and realize the importance of communication when we explain it as you did, but they are not putting in efforts to improvise as we try to do it using our prescribed syllabus. Can you please suggest some new ways of enhancing their LSRW skills based on some new theories of communication that will help lot that will help us a lot who are teaching communication skills?
One very effective strategy is to do a lot of role play in the classroom. Give them situations, you know. That is where authentic materials come in also, in the sense that if you give them a situation, for example, you say, okay, one person, you are the travel agent for today. Get brochures from a local travel agent's office. Give those brochures to that student. Make other students the clients, you know. Let them visit and let them exchange notes, talk to each other. So when the whole class is watching them, it becomes some kind of theater, and they invest in it. So create these real life situations in the classroom. That is one way. And a very good current pedagogy is to have theater workshops. Get a good theater person to run a workshop over the weekend for your students, because when they participate in a theater workshop, many people, many children who don't actually speak in the classroom begin to speak up. Or they have any emotional issues at the back of the mind which is holding them back from communicating. In a theater workshop, they take out all that emotional stress, and then they are able to focus on the communication. So these are the two latest techniques you can use in your classroom. Make sure you incorporate listening, speaking, reading, writing, if not every day, at least 3-4 times a week in your lessons in the classroom. And it's not difficult. Don't leave listening, speaking, reading, writing to just the language teacher. Even the other subjects can use listening, speaking, reading, writing. Thanks to the digital world, we have so many materials that are available here. Give them exposure. Give them lots of variety of materials, and automatically they will respond.
Right.
Yeah. Next question.
One more question, ma'am. The students are afraid of English. What are your suggestions to get them free from this fear, ma'am?
See, I have noticed that students from certain states are afraid of English. One very important reason for it is the educational policy of the state and the government, where a certain language is not implemented right from the beginning. That becomes a problem. Now, to overcome that problem, you will have to immerse the child in an environment where he or she has to use the language. For example, the direct method. Now, what does the direct method says? Those of you who studied in convent schools, you would remember that while the school was on, you were in the school, you were not allowed to use your mother tongue. You had to use the target language. So one way out is to make your classroom a space where only the direct method will be used. That, okay, for such and such period every day, you cannot use any other language. The other way out is to establish clubs or groups in your institute, where learners then have to use the language while they are in that club or group. You see, the point is to give them an environment that is not possible for them beyond the walls of the institution. Within the institution, immerse them in the language.
Right.
And most important, you have to convey to them that you will not be able to progress without this language, whatever the language.
Right.
Yeah.
Then one more question, ma'am. How to teach students to manage time as they don't know how much precious time they are losing? Many a time we see students are just sitting and gossiping, and they are not means they are not keen to learn something new. They are not a great reader. Means they are just wasting their time. We can see around us that they are not utilizing the time. They have such a precious time and they are losing. So, any advice for them, ma'am?
At the beginning of every class, whether it is a semester or a year, create a timeline for the class.
Right.
Okay, this is the teaching part. This is the examination. This is where you get your result. This is where you move to the next class or the profession, whatever. I'll give you an example. For example, in the department, when we teach our MA classes, somewhere around now they have 4 semesters. So somewhere around the 3rd semester, we start telling them, maybe 1 year from now, you will be teaching a class. Do you think you can stand in front of a class? Do you think you can stand in my place and teach this topic? So that becomes a reality check.
Yeah.
You have to keep giving them reality checks.
Right.
I'm sorry to say, many times we teachers are not the right role model for time management. For example, we go to class, outside in the corridor we see 2 friends standing. It's time for the class, but we stand and chat with those friends while the class is waiting. So that becomes an example that they learn, They feel chatting is more important. But if you loudly tell your friends, well, it's time for my class, can I see you later? So that gives a very important lesson in time management. Also, we are not to put off our learners by telling them that the time you spend with your friends is time wasted. We need to tell them that you need to divide your day like a cake into slices. So these many slices are for friends, these many slices for family, these many slices for school or college, and these many slices for your professional development. Now you have to see how many slices do you want to give your friends. If your cake has 8 slices and you have given 7 to your friends, so then ask one of your friends to go and sit for your interview also. So you see, you've got to go beyond your role as just a teacher. You will have to be mentor. You will have to be parent. Only then will you be able to correct them. Once I had this very small class, it was an optional class of 12 students, and they started telling me, ma'am, you don't know, it's such fun to go to a cafe coffee day. It's beautiful to sit there. You can play on the guitar, you can do this, you can do that. So I told them, okay, let's do one thing. There is a class test coming up. All of you get marks within this range, and we will all go to the cafe coffee day one day. You won't believe it. All of them got marks in that range. And then we did go to a cafe coffee day. We sat there and we ate and we had a good time. And after that day, my class did not give me any trouble because they realized here is a teacher who understands that we need both in our lives. So you see, that is why I keep saying tip of the iceberg. You are the tip of your iceberg. So what you take to your class is based on your experiences. If you yourself are spending 3 hours a day chatting with somebody on the cell phone, you cannot be a teacher of good time management. So know thyself. Again, we come back. Please go ahead, Mansi.
Right, ma'am. So, ma'am, the session was really cool, calm, and composite. Fabulous concepts, ma'am. Thank you very much. I want to add something that you already have. So I like the concept of good. We have to be a good contributor, right? So if a teacher is a good contributor, the student will be definitely they will go through the same thing, right, ma'am? So what we are thinking right now, students have to gain marks only. It is not up to the marks. How the human being you are is most important, I think, because it will create the whole personality of yours. Just if you are running after marks, it will not do good to your life, right? If you want to mold your life, you want to flourish in your life, marks as well as contributorship will also count, I think so. And that concept, I liked it very much, ma'am. And ma'am, some of the viewers are asking for the books and your email ID. So can you please share the slide of the books list?
Sure, sure. And please, I hope you all will forgive me if I repeat the fact that whatever I said in this session is not the last word. Remember, flexibility is most important.
Yes.
These are not the only books in the world that you should be reading. There may be so many others. So
Yes.
feel free to create your own reading list for your class. Because remember, for any student, for any classroom, nothing is the last word. There will be something else that will work better. And the teacher is the best judge. What will work in my class and what will not. All right?
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Shall we?
list?
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much for sharing such great information to our faculties. Thank you very much, ma'am. Again, now we are ending our session, and really thankful to you, ma'am. Namaste.
Namaskar, Mansi. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure, ma'am.
May I
Thank you, ma'am.
compliment you on your wonderful management and administration.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye, ma'am. Thanks.